What does a successful pivot into new services look like for an agency? It isn't always smooth sailing. In this episode, we talk with Ted Lau about how he identified the need for a more profitable and stable service niche during a difficult business partner breakup. Ted's journey shows us the steps he took to understand the client's needs and then adapt his business model to enhance value. By making it a priority to seek client feedback, Ted transitioned his business from a creative service provider to a lead generation digital marketing agency. He leaned into 4 keys for growing the agency and navigating the pivot, including aligning marketing strategies to macroeconomic trends, digging deep to understand client needs, leaning into open communication, and shifting from fluff to measured results. Tune in to hear how these 4 elements help this agency build sustainable client relationships and ensure long-term success. Welcome to the Small But Mighty Agency podcast. If you want to grow an agency to 7 figures and beyond without working more hours in your business, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Audrey Joy Kwan. I know what it takes to build an agency, including supporting an agency owner in selling and exiting. I also have a master's degree in communications, specializing in organizational development. My team and I have worked behind the scenes of multiple 7-figure agencies and have coached and consulted with over 150 agency owners. All this to say, when you join us on the Small But Mighty Agency podcast, you get real-world experience and practical tips that help you work less, earn more, and lead with integrity. So let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to the Small But Mighty Agency podcast. On this summer season of the podcast, we're taking a look at what is working in agencies right now and what isn't. We're doing it through the eyes of our guests who are agency owners and agency experts. I'm excited to bring Ted Lau to the podcast. Ted is the owner and CEO of Ballistic Arts, an award-winning online lead generation digital marketing agency for B2B professional service firms and distributors and manufacturers. They have been around for 20 years and have full divisions in lead generation, digital marketing, graphic design, video production, and web development. And in his spare time, Ted is running a YouTube channel and co-hosts the Marketing News Canada podcast. We're going to jump right into the no fluff good stuff and chat about retention today. Now, Ted is going to share what his agency is doing to increase retention and reduce churn. Ted, thank you for being here. Before we get to the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about today, let's talk about what it means to be a partner to your clients. Now, retention starts with strong partnership. What do you think a healthy agency and client partnership should look like?
Well, first of all, Audrey, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. Hey, everybody. So Ted here. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a strong partnership, communication, I think that's the very first thing. Open communication. And yes, there may be a agency-client relationship. Ultimately, though, they're hiring you or us for our expertise. So it would not really serve the relationship if we were trying to hide and kind of worry about what they might think. For us, our tagline on our website, if you go to ballisticarts.com, we say, no bullshit digital marketing for B2B companies. And so it's all about the no BS. So if we are working with a client and they are looking for us to solve a problem, we're going to tell it to them straight as is, how we're going to do things, how we're going to solve those problems. And that's basically the very beginning of it is having good communication. And then I think the second thing that we really want to work on is getting real results. A lot of marketing agencies, and you just talked about no fluff. A lot of agencies, unfortunately, are about the fluff, about getting the likes, getting really good brands designed, or having awards. But a lot of that stuff, it's nice, but it doesn't actually generate real revenue, real results for our clients. And so what we did was pivot our business from a creative agency to a lead gen digital marketing agency, where we're combining creative and data and really telling the story, but also generating the sales for our clients.
I have questions about your pivot. Actually, I want to start there. Tell me a bit more about pivoting from being a creative agency into lead generation agency.
So I started the business 22 years ago, actually 22 years ago this week, in the room above my parents' garage. And we started as a video production company back in the day of DVDs and VHSs, and we basically sold video services. But then we got into graphic design, we got into branding, we did a lot of website design and development. We worked in various different industries. And a lot of the things that we got into was because of this whole getting where you fit in. You know, we were a small agency, didn't really know anybody, and anyone that was willing to pay us, we kind of got into it. How we got into branding and web was simply because a lot of people didn't want to pay us for video services, but they're like, hey, I noticed that you did your own brochure. I noticed you built your website. Can you help us do those things? And so that's how we got into the creative space. But with creative, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners may know this, it's getting commoditized, right? And so that race to the bottom was getting very uncomfortable. As much as we were winning awards for our clients and we were very well established in the industries that we served, it got harder and harder to make the margins make sense. And I had a business partner who was very much super talented in the creative space, but didn't know how to help pivot the business to something that had more value. So fast forward a number of years, around 2019, we had a breakup. You know, as businesses do, relationships do, you have a divorce. So we had this, I would say a fairly messy divorce, as it were. And when we broke up, I started thinking, okay, this is my opportunity to pivot out of this for-project, eat what you kill, terrible, lumpy cash flow issue and try to find something that could provide more stability, feel a bit more rewarding. So what I did was basically take out a lot of my trusted clients for dinner, for beers, for lunch, and really ask them, hey, we've been working together for a long time, off and on over the years. If I was able to add a division to my business, what would it be? So I asked these people really vulnerably, what would you want? And every single one of them said, Ted, I want you to get into social media marketing. I want you to do my social media. And I was like, oh my God, I hate social media. Why? Right? Yeah. But they said, well, Ted, you know, Ballistic Arts has done a lot of really good creative work, really good storytelling. You've won us a ton of awards. But when we send that stuff to our digital marketing folks, it kind of falls into this black hole. We don't know what's going on, where it's going, and we're not really getting anything out of it. And we're paying thousands of dollars a month. And I was like, all I heard was thousands of dollars a month, like paying it in my head. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, what are you getting? They're like, I don't know. I really don't know. Likes, me found on SEO, but I'm not getting any dollars for it. And I just like thinking in my head, if I'm paying someone thousands of dollars a month, like if I was to pay employees that, I need to see a return. So I just blurted out of my mouth after a couple of beers, what if I got you leads? Well, what if I got you sales? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what if I got people that were able to pick up the phone and actually want for your service? And that sounds pretty standard. But for the B2B space, business to business, where we're talking about distributors and manufacturers that are selling $50,000, $100,000 pieces of equipment, that's not really that common because it's a relationship exercise. And as one client said, Ted, if you did that, I'll never leave you. And to this day, this client is still working with us.
All businesses go through evolutions, and smart businesses look at the future and know how to let go of things that no longer serve them. When you do that, you might have to lean into short-term pain for long-term gain. I'm sure your story has some of that in it. It sounds like you had this aha moment and then wanted to realign your business to the new vision. And I know that sounds easy, but we all know there's more to it. Walk us through some of the key moments.
I went back to the office, get the staff into the boardroom for our quarterly meeting, which was 5 months delayed because I was dealing with the divorce of my business partner, and said, this is the new direction of the company. We're doing this, onto the board, the whiteboard in the boardroom. And I literally had people in my own company yell at me like, are you crazy? Like, we're barely surviving and doing well in insert service, web design, branding, whatever it was. And you want to go like on some weird like half-hacked, half-fast idea on this? Like, are you nuts? Like, you don't even know how to do that. I'm like, you know what? We have an education budget. I will train people to cross-train because I feel like this is the future. But basically, lo and behold, nobody took me up on the education. So I took the course myself. And through that, the final project of the school project, I swapped the school logo, put my logo in, showed this plan to one of my clients. I'm like, what do you think? And this client was like, that's exactly what I want. And I'm like, well, how much do you think you pay for it? And they're like, I don't know. And they threw out a number per month. And I'm like, funny you should say that. That's exactly how much I was going to charge. And that's literally how we pivoted. So it's not glamorous, but it worked. And so this was summer of 19, late summer of 19. And by the beginning of 2020, we had already announced on our marketing, on our e-newsletter, et cetera, on our blogs that, it was a clickbaity, like Ballistic Arts is dead and long live new Ballistic Arts, where we were saying we've pivoted from a creative agency to a lead gen agency. We had garnered about maybe half a dozen small paying clients that were, not that big revenue wise, like percentage wise of our top line revenue. And then 6 weeks later, the world shuts down. But that actually served us.
I see how focusing on lead generation versus strictly creative work would have served you in the pandemic. Lead generation directly impacts return on investment, and people pay for that. You followed your gut instinct and it paid off. What's notable is that the gut instinct was informed by real conversations with clients. So when COVID hit, you had an offer that explicitly people would pay for, and they explicitly expressed they would pay for. And during the pandemic, I had the privilege of the inside perspective into many agencies. And a lot of agency owners thought, oh no, marketing is going to take a hit and get slashed. But it was quite the opposite for a lot of niche agencies that I worked with. I think it's because a lot of businesses came online during COVID and there was an injection of cash from the government. So for certain niches, there was more money to spend.
During that time, that first I want to say from March of 2020 till about November, people were scared. People were shutting down. People were furloughing staff. I knew people that actually had to shut down their agency and move back to whatever country they came from, like England or whatever, because their budgets were all slashed. I knew somebody who had lost 70% of all their revenue in that first month, because contracts were getting canceled. Ourselves, even like our creative side of things, where we were building websites, video, graphics. We had 8-10 video contracts that were all put on hold. We did have to finish some of our web contracts, but we didn't have any new web contracts. And then on the branding side, that was all paused because it was for brand launches that were now indefinitely on hold. But because our offering of we will get you more business, not just like, oh, we're going to raise brand awareness. It's like we are actually like measuring how much revenue you're going to get from our exercise, from our program. These clients started coming, and we were able to keep the business afloat and grow, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder. And perhaps the generalization that all agencies did well is a generalization. I think I am speaking from a perspective of being inside certain agencies at that time and seeing those agencies flourish. And I think what made those agencies really flourish is that they were and owned a niche that was very profitable through COVID. And, some of those niches that required a lot of marketing at that time were healthcare niches.
Yes.
Healthcare was, right?
So healthcare, I think, really blew up. I knew a lot of folks that abandoned their existing model and doubled down on healthcare. And that really worked out. We didn't do that. In fact, we worked with, a lot of essential service businesses at the time, folks that couldn't shut down because of the government legislations. But we also focused on a lot of, the B2B that needed to ship goods out, all that kind of stuff. And that really helped. So we had for business wise, it was a relatively stable time for us, as opposed to a lot of the peers that I knew. And granted, I didn't know a lot of folks in the healthcare advertising space.
Yeah. I do think you bring up a good point in that, certain niches, of course, did not do well because the world shut down. And then there were certain niches that flourished because the world needed them more than ever. I think it's a good reminder, if you're an agency that is choosing niches, to think about the longevity and the sustainability of that niche through economic downturns.
I knew somebody who moved to my agency because the agency they worked for specialized in restaurants and hotels. And at that time, like, they were done. That the agency I don't think it exists anymore because of the fact that, and you're right. I think one thing, if we're talking about how to provide some longevity tips and sustainability tips to your listeners, I think is really understanding the macroeconomics of the world economy, what's going on. Like I talk about interest rates to my team because that actually impacts certain consumer behaviors for a number
100%.
of different clients, right? Just that as an instance, or certain conflicts globally. How does that impact our messaging for some of our team members? So having that, not team members, our clients. So how does that impact the greater world, economics, geopolitics? How does that impact what we're doing? And then where are the opportunities? Are things that I think not enough business owners, I don't even say agency owners, business owners, because we're so focused on our day to day that we don't think we have time to look at what's going on in the greater world. And I think that's a mistake.
100%. I love that you brought up something concrete like interest rates, for example, and how that impacts the economy. And I think one concrete example is looking at the real estate industry. You and I both live in Vancouver, and real estate here is very expensive. And once you see the interest rates shoot up, you see land development stall, and you see agencies who serve real estate start to slow down.
That is a really good point. So Ballistic Arts, from 2010, around the Vancouver Winter Olympics, all the way up until right before I broke up with my business partner, we were like top 3, top 4 agencies in town to serve the real estate development industry. All the big developers that you would know if you walk down the streets of Vancouver, we have serviced them. We were literally at every single RFP opportunity we were at. And so we had a really good name. However, and I saw this in 17 and 18 when the interest rates popped up like from nothing to a little bit higher, and there was a stall for like 6 months. And I knew that that wasn't sustainable because like I thought if there's a crash or some other thing, we're going to be hooped. And so when I bought out my partner, I deliberately made a pivot to leave the industry because I thought it was too vulnerable. And quite frankly, like I said, too commoditized. As much as we were very well known, we were winning awards, there was always someone new and younger that's doing it for cheaper, faster, whatever it was. And the value of what we brought to the table wasn't there. So when we pivoted out, it actually was a much safer and more sustainable avenue for us.
That really goes back to this idea of making strong strategic choices in which industries you want to work with. When we look at new agency owners, they often pick their industry according to the passion. There's nothing wrong with choosing things according to your passion. But on the other side of that, you have to look at the sustainability of that market. And Ted, you bring up a really good point. When you looked at the sustainability of the market, you just didn't look at the current reality of that market. You looked at volatility. And that volatility encouraged you to think further down the pipeline in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and how do you have a sustainable business? I love this conversation. Ted, I'm going to take us back to the question that I originally posed to you when we first connected to do this interview. That is talking about retention and what you're currently doing in your business for retention. Now, you had mentioned that one of the key things that your agency does is connecting your clients' revenue and profit to your agency results. Tell us more about what it means to connect your clients' revenue and profit to your agency's results.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of marketers don't love talking about. Sales and marketing are on the opposites, like the other side of each of the same coin. Sales and marketing go hand in hand. However, marketers think sales guys are kind of gross, and sales folks think marketers sometimes are just full of hot air. That's kind of the stereotype generalization, but that can be the conversation that you see in the boardroom. And so from a marketer standpoint, I don't do anymore, but I did like a large line share of the business development for Ballistic Arts. At the end of the day, I was a sales guy. And so sales, I had to really reverse engineer what are my goals, how many proposals I need to do based on the close rate that I have to hit this many deals so that I can generate X revenue to hit my goal. And I don't think enough marketers think that way. There's a book called The E-Myth. It's a really old book now, but that book talks about how an entrepreneur that starts a business, wears three main hats, the entrepreneur hat, the technician hat, and the manager hat. And most of us get in because maybe we were a good baker, so we get into becoming a bakery owner. Or maybe we're really good at plumbing, and so now we own a plumbing company. And so for myself, I was really good at the creative, so I got into the creative space. But a lot of marketers that get into that space, the last thing that we ever think about is the business development side, the sales side of things.
I see this with my clients who are agency owners. They fit this profile. You start your business as a good doer. So you have a skill set, and in the agency world, typically that skill set might be creative or design. It could be PPC, it could be SEO, it could even be strategy. And you build your business on that skill set. And so you get really good at doing the thing. And then learning to market your business and learning to do sales are two different categories and completely different from being the doer in your business. When agency owners have to scale their business, they've got to be able to step away from that doer and into the marketing and sales role. One of the things you pointed out here that's applicable to agency owners and important to sales is understanding your KPIs so you can set better targets. And it sounds like when you work with your ideal clients too, who are manufacturers and distributors, part of the work you're doing is helping them to clarify the KPIs so there is transparency and you can measure together.
Every business needs to generate revenue, and anything that we can do to tie our results to revenue is going to help. Now, for us, we're not the sales agent. We don't know the product or service intimately like they would. But if I can generate them a number of leads for them monthly that they can close and then turn into revenue, then they're going to see us as a for-profit center as opposed to a cost center. That's the idea that we want to hit ultimately. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
What you're highlighting is taking that extra step to put on the CMO hat for clients. And that's an added value in helping your clients feel like you're a partner in their success. Now, it's an outstanding proposition when agencies have the systems and processes to help the client think strategically through the numbers that they need in order to hit their goals. And I think while it benefits the client, it also works in favor of agencies because without a realistic goalpost, you can't win.
Oh yeah, of course, 100%. 100%. I need to actually come as almost the fractional CMO, understanding what your revenues are, what your goals are, what your average order size, what your close rate, what are your margins? For every dollar I put in, how much do you need to return to break even? And how much do you actually want to hit for your goal standpoint? And then can you actually handle the business that I bring in for you? These are common questions that we have to ask our clients to uncover. They're uncomfortable questions. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. And quite frankly, we don't have a whole lot of competition because we know that in our space, especially in the B2B space, there's just not a lot of folks that do that. B2B is kind of like, I always joke, it's kind of the ugly stepchild of marketing. No one wants to market a widget. They want to market for Nike or Lululemon. They don't want to market some kind of paving product or, cement or steel or something like that. Just, why, right?
I have a blog post on this topic titled, Which Niches Have the Most Opportunities for Agencies Right Now? In it, I make a point about niches that are not glamorous. Some of the most profitable niches are not glamorous, meaning they aren't sexy like luxury brands or tech companies. Instead, they might be boring because they're not savvy with marketing, branding, or communications. But given that they need to be more savvy at marketing, there is opportunity. So tell us more about your niche.
We market for a lot of professional service firms, as you read in my bio earlier, where they could be like data research companies, law firms, CPA firms, engineer firms, any kind of service-based business. But we also work with manufacturers. They can be people that make fake plants for movie sets, or they could be a client that makes permeable paving products for drainage and whatnot, or someone that is a commercial manufacturer of floors, whatever that might be. It's the business selling to another business. And usually for us, where it's successful is that your average order size is usually like at least 50, 100 grand a piece. So the sales cycle is a little bit longer, but how are you going to get to that specific niche person, that facilities manager or that data research, directors of research in a large conglomerate? How can we talk to those people? And it's way more challenging. It's a lot more fun for me because, again, I like to understand the macroeconomics behind how things work.
Mhm.
So for me, it's fun, but I think for a lot of marketers, it might be a little bit on the boring side, you know?
Give us an example. If you're working with someone who is a distributor or a manufacturer and you
Mhm.
need to reach someone very specific
Mhm.
that they need to speak to, what are some things that you're doing right now to help the client achieve that ROI?
Ultimately, what you need to do is two things. First, you got to reverse engineer what's the goal line? How much business do I have to generate for this client? And what's the close rate? All that kind of stuff. And then from a creative standpoint, you got to understand why their product, their service, whatnot differentiates them from the competitors. And this is for every company. It doesn't have to be B2B, it could be B2C, but understanding that. And then you're targeting the folks. Those folks will want to know that you understand them, but they might not be looking, they're not searching, how do I find, insert random like super specific niche product for a B2B company. It is us reaching out to them, targeting those people, but then speaking particular industry jargon that only that person would know, like anyone that's in that space would know, and then talking about what that pain is, how they're losing sleep at night, and how we solve that problem in really good messaging, good creative, good storytelling, so that you're targeting good data, you're having a really good creative. And the industry jargon is really important because a lot of times in sales, you're not supposed to talk industry jargon because you're worried people are going to glaze over. But when we're targeting folks from a social media standpoint, mass marketing 20, 30,000 people in one go, a lot of those people aren't exactly that role. They might fit the psychographics or demographics, but they might not actually fit that specific role, or they're in that industry. So if we're using industry terms in the creative, people that don't understand what the hell we're saying will skip right by it. People that know it will engage. So that will increase our ad relevancy score and lower our cost per click. So that's one concrete example there.
I really like what you shared about jargon. I think most marketers think that jargon is something we should absolutely remove from marketing because we need to speak like 5-year-olds so everyone can understand us in the marketing world. But you highlight a really good point there, right? That is highly dependent who you're trying to speak to. And in this B2B scenario where you need people to be in the industry and connect with the content that you're putting out there, then jargon's not a bad thing because it helps them see that you know what you're talking about, helps them
Absolutely.
connect to you as an expert.
100%. Right? We have clients that are in the engineering space or in the IT space where the jargon is critical. When their clients come to their landing page on a specific subject matter, they have to sound like they know the subject matter, that they're subject matter experts. If we are speaking like we're all in grade 4, that's going to be a problem. That's not going to solidify any kind of confidence in the prospective buyer.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think it really helps people understand why jargon isn't necessarily a bad thing in marketing, dependent on who your actual audience is. Ted, I'm about to wrap up here. Before I do that, I was going to ask you about your agency owner's journey, but I know you shared quite a bit about that in the beginning. It was a great journey. So to wrap up here, let me ask you, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience that you think would help them better look at retention and churn in their business and how they can improve it?
I do think that if you are looking to have higher retention and lower churn, a lot of it is ultimately tied to value. And it's not value that you think you're most valuable and you can do best. It's the value in which your clients see in your business. And so one thing that I've done and I continue to do is take trusted clients out for beers and lunch or whatnot and just ask them point blank, like, hey, we've been working together for X number of years. Why are you working with us? There's tons of other marketing agencies out there, tons of other businesses. Why us? And they will say what they say. And there's usually a pattern over time as to why. And then if you're able to understand that and recognize that pattern, that becomes your USP, your unique selling proposition.
Yes. It's a targeted form of market research, speaking to the people that are in your business who use your services and spending time understanding them. I think that's the secret sauce in any business, is to really understand why your clients work with you and perhaps even why they leave you. That's important to know as well too.
Actually, that's a really good point. If you have a couple more minutes, is that some of the best information that we've gleaned are from clients that are upset, livid even, and those that are leaving. And if I have found, having enough gumption, courage to ask those tough questions, that uncovers a lot. And sometimes the livid response, once they feel like they've been heard, starts to repair the damaged relationship. And in fact, you might be able to salvage it because every relationship has its bumps and warts. I have a client that during COVID, we did a project for, and it ran quite a bit over budget, not on us, though the client thought it was on us, and lost their mind, right? And said, I'm never effing going to refer you any business. And we've been working with this person for 18 years by that point. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, I'm never effing referring you anybody. Finished the project with them, still working with them. 6 months after that, or 6 months ago, he gave us a 5-star review, right?
That's great. And that really goes back to your first point. You had mentioned that communication is a pillar in any agency, and communication means being able to have those hard conversations. People work in agencies and people are fallible. People make mistakes. But the way through those mistakes, the way through those things that we don't expect to happen is those honest conversations. And I think what you just demonstrated is that treating a human like a human, i.e., having a hard conversation with them, hearing them out, help them to understand your perspective while also hearing theirs. And sometimes that's all that it takes. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a simple solve like that all the time, but I think that's a great place to start.
Amen.
Yeah. Ted, where can people find you?
Lots of places. So if you are new into this world and want to learn more about business tips, go to YouTube and check out my channel, Ted. If you're a marketer and looking to grow your marketing career, you can check out Marketing News Canada. I'm one of the co-hosts there, and we interview some really great marketing minds from all over the world. And if you're a B2B company in professional services or manufacturing, check out ballisticarts.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Ted Lau. I think there's like 4 of us on there. And if you're looking, we're always hiring and looking for good help. So there's a career section on my website with lots of different career options. So by all means, please apply because we're growing. So that's how you can find me.
Yay to growth. We'll get all those links in the show notes. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Have a good one, everybody.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me at the Small But Mighty Agency podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you hit the follow or subscribe button in your podcast app and share it with a friend. I'll see you on the next one.